Here's what nobody expected. The world's first ransomware attack powered by artificial intelligence still couldn't pull it off without a human sitting at the keyboard. That's a contradiction, right? An AI attack that needs humans to complete it. But the real story is far more unsettling than any headline captures. What if the actual threat isn't a fully autonomous AI attack, but an AI that makes human hackers exponentially more dangerous and harder to catch? TechCrunch broke the story of attackers using an advanced AI system to scale up their ransomware operation like never before. The AI handled reconnaissance, automatically identified vulnerable systems, mapped network architectures, and launched the initial breach with barely any human oversight. Essentially, a hacking robot doing the grunt work. But here's where it gets complicated. When things got real, the AI hit its limits. It couldn't negotiate with victims or understand extortion psychology. It couldn't adapt when defenses fought back. It couldn't close the deal and collect the money. That's where the humans came in. A criminal still had to sit down and negotiate with the victim company, manage communications, demand the ransom, and vanish before law enforcement arrived. This hybrid attack, AI doing the automation while humans handle judgment calls and the payoff, might actually be more dangerous than a purely autonomous AI attack ever could be. To understand why this matters, we need to rewind a bit. Ransomware's been around for decades. It's basically malware that locks up your files and demands payment to unlock them. But for years, the process was clunky. Hackers had to manually scout targets, find entry points, probe network defenses, and craft custom attacks for each victim. It was labor-intensive and slow. Then AI started changing the game. Machine learning could now handle the repetitive reconnaissance work, scanning thousands of networks, identifying which systems ran outdated software, mapping out vulnerabilities, and spotting the most lucrative targets automatically. Imagine a workforce of digital scouts that never sleeps, never gets tired, and can process 1 million potential targets while a human hacker is still on their coffee break. That's the appeal to cybercriminals. They get speed, scale, and plausible deniability. The AI did it, we just pointed it at the target. But there's a catch. As sophisticated as AI has become, there are still things only a human can do. Understanding nuance, reading between the lines of a victim's desperate email, knowing when to push harder and when to back off, recognizing a law enforcement honeypot when you see one. That's where the hybrid model comes in. AI does the brute force work, humans do the thinking. And that combination, it turns out, is becoming the new standard in cybercrime. Here's how the specific attack played out. Researchers discovered that attackers deployed a machine learning system that probed corporate networks looking for outdated security patches and misconfigurations, basically things that experienced system administrators should have caught but sometimes miss. The AI wasn't writing new exploit code, but it was incredibly skilled at recognizing patterns in network data that spelled vulnerability. Once it found a target, it automated the initial breach, often using techniques like credential stuffing, trying thousands of known passwords until one worked. Fast, efficient, relentless. From there, the AI spread through the network like a digital ghost, silently mapping out which computers and servers existed, what data they held, and where the backups were stored. An experienced hacker would take weeks to do this manually. The AI did it in hours. It even encrypted files, the core of a ransomware attack, without needing direct instructions for each system. Imagine a thief who can case a building, pick every lock, and make off with the goods without you ever knowing they were there until you noticed your stuff was gone. That's what this attack looked like from the inside. But then, after all that automation, something had to change. The AI couldn't do the hardest part, the negotiation. That's where the human hacker showed up. So here's where the breakdown happened. The AI had successfully encrypted thousands of files across the victim company's network. Data was locked. Backups were corrupted. The company was effectively held hostage. But at that exact moment, when the technical domination was complete, the AI couldn't move forward. It couldn't send the ransom demand in a way that seemed believable. It couldn't read the room when the victim's negotiator responded with skepticism or threats. A human criminal then took over. They made contact through encrypted channels. They had conversations with the company, reading tone and body language through text or maybe video calls. They understood that if they demanded too much, the company would just restore from backups elsewhere or involve the FBI. But if they asked for less, they'd get paid faster. They knew which executives to target for maximum pressure. They understood the psychology of a terrified CTO versus an insurance broker. They used social engineering, bluffing, false time limits, and all the dirty tricks of negotiation that an AI simply hasn't learned yet. What took the AI minutes, the human part took days. But it's the days that matter when you're committing a crime, because the faster you're done, the less law enforcement has time to react. Now you might be thinking, okay, but isn't this just normal ransomware with an AI helping out? What's so different? Here's the distinction. Traditional ransomware attacks were crude and narrow. A hacker would find one or two entry points, maybe catch one company unprepared, and hope for the best. Success rates were maybe 5 to 10%, but with AI automation, the success rate jumped dramatically. We are talking about 40, 50, even 60% of targeted companies paying up. Why? Because the AI removed the human limitation on scale. One hacker can now threaten 100 companies simultaneously. The AI does the scanning, the initial breach, the file encryption. The one human negotiator just handles the extortion calls and cryptocurrency collection. It's assembly line ransomware. And here's the really terrifying part. The human bottleneck becomes the only place law enforcement can actually catch them. The AI attacks leave a digital trail that's hard to follow and nearly impossible to prosecute. But the human negotiator, they have to make themselves known. They have to communicate. And that's when the investigators can trace them. So paradoxically, adding more automation actually made catching these criminals harder. Because law enforcement has to wait for the human to show up. Here's what this means for cybersecurity going forward. The threat model has completely shifted. For decades, companies invested in intrusion detection, tools that tried to spot hackers breaking in by looking for anomalous activity. But an AI attacker that follows normal patterns, that moves slowly and carefully, that mimics legitimate administrative actions, it basically becomes invisible to those tools. And that invisible phase, the reconnaissance and initial breach, that's where the damage gets locked in. Once the AI has spread through your network and encrypted everything, it's often too late. Your human defenders are now reactive instead of proactive. They're dealing with extortion instead of preventing it. For mid-sized and large companies, this represents a fundamental change in how they need to think about security. You can't just patch your servers and hope for the best anymore. You need continuous monitoring of network behavior. You need to assume breach, meaning you should design your systems assuming an attacker is already inside and will eventually try to access your crown jewels. Most companies aren't there yet. That's the real risk. This attack isn't just a new threat. It's exposing how unprepared most organizations are for threats that are patient, methodical, and amplified by machine learning. So what can you actually do about this? If you're running a business, the fundamentals haven't changed, but they need to be done better. 1. Air-gapped backups. That means backups that are physically disconnected from your main network, not just on a different server, but completely isolated. When ransomware hits, your backups are your lifeline. If they're encrypted or corrupted, you're finished. 2. Network segmentation. Don't let every computer on your network access every other computer. Divide your network into zones so that even if one zone gets compromised, the others stay protected. An AI attacker can't spread as fast when it hits walls. 3. Monitor for behavioral anomalies. Set up alerts for things like a server suddenly trying to access files it normally doesn't touch, or unusual login patterns during off hours. These might seem normal individually, but together they are a red flag. 4. If you're attacked, assume the criminals will call your insurance broker. Your broker becomes a target. Work with them ahead of time on a communication protocol so bad actors can't impersonate you. And finally, consider cyber insurance that covers extortion. It's insurance that pays up if you're hit, which might actually be cheaper than the ransom itself. Here's what the headlines are missing about this attack. It's not a story about unstoppable AI. It's a story about a new operating model for crime, AI doing the grunting, humans doing the cashing out. And that model works precisely because it splits the labor between what machines are good at, pattern recognition and untiring persistence, and what humans are still better at, judgment, psychology, and knowing when to break the rules. The real threat isn't that AI will become smarter than hackers. It's that AI will make average hackers dramatically more dangerous. A mediocre attacker with an AI assistant now has the effectiveness of a world-class criminal. That changes everything for the entire cybersecurity industry. For organizations, the wake-up call is clear. Old-school security thinking won't cut it anymore. You need to redesign how your company thinks about data, access, and resilience from the ground up. For everyone else watching this is just the beginning of AI-powered crime. It's not going to get slower or less effective. It's only going to scale faster and bigger. What you do to protect yourself and your company in the next few months might be the difference between sleeping soundly and losing millions to extortion.